Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming, and once again a pretty special video. Today we're talking more of course about Monster Hunter Wilds, and in particular this time the new flow of the gameplay and the way it's presented to you. With the major changes to the way the world is connected, there's this key concept the devs have put across in different interviews and discussions. The word seamless seems to be their repeated mantra for Wilds. They've described the game not as an open world game, but as a seamless Monster Hunter game. But what does that really mean? That's what I want to cover in this video, because what you're seeing in this gameplay is our gameplay of the full game. This is thanks to Capcom inviting us down to their London offices last month to try out two different versions of the game. One was literally the opening section of the game, stopped at a certain point, and another let us jump a bit forward to the recently revealed thor locale, the Ice Shard Cliffs, where we were able to fight Nerscylla, and also earlier Rompompolo in the Oilwell Basin. Please remember with that context then, that this footage was around the time the game was still in development, so some things may change from this to launch. And for those videos, we're following guidelines given to us from Capcom. Now across the experience, myself and Josh got to see a new flow for monster hunting and what it really looks like. How they've organised the story around these new, less restrictive concepts. It results in a unique approach to reveal the world you're in and how you're going to interact with it. Now what's the normal way you progress a story in Monster Hunter? Well, maybe you'd spawn in the village, like the main hub, you pick a list of main quests, maybe some optional quests, and to progress the story, you need to do all the current marked main quests, which means hunting, say, the 3 remaining monsters tied to the locale you're currently working through. You pick the monster, you load in, you have maybe a cool introduction, you defeat the monster, you load back out the hunt. Now you're back in the village, you pick the next monster, and repeat. Between those hunts, you'll stop to restock your supplies. You make sure to eat a meal before each hunt. You'll consider current weapons and gear and upgrades. Eventually though, at certain points, you will reach a special mission with more story to set up the big fight that follows, which then would unlock the next hunting rank, a new list of options to work through, eventually bringing you to a new locale for the first time. Meanwhile, in Wilds, the flow is completely different, even if it follows the same familiar rules. It's just that it's presented in a new way, breaking that usual formula. Instead of having one hub that we go from to all the locales, each locale now has its own hub, called base camps as we know them. These seem to progress with the story, unlocking new features, such as the merchant, proper use of the smithy, as more and more people show up, giving you new options. We then have pop-up camps to customize the fast travel around that locale, connecting that map how we want based on what we're aiming to do. Now when we're actually going out for questing and other tasks and exploration, that's where the seamless concept really begins. You could be out in the locale doing something, collecting a specific supply, then bump into a monster and attack it, starting a quest to hunt said monster. You could pull up the map and see what's there right now, or what's going to come on the next refresh. Instead of doing, say, a quest and then finishing that quest and then doing the usual restock and making sure you have your meal so that you're buffed up for the next quest, which you then finish and have to repeat that process, it is again seamless here, where when you pull up the portable barbecue, you can cook a proper meal on the spot, wherever you are. Maybe there's a pop-up camp near you that you physically run over to with your seikret and the quick movement that provides, letting you restock and then get back out into the world where you're kind of already there. There's a lot of little things that prevent you from having to basically be out doing the thing, playing the game, then going through a loading screen to be somewhere else to do your quote-unquote chores or management, to then go through a loading screen to get back into the game. It doesn't really break up and start-stop nearly so much. Even down to the big detail that, locales are now physically connected, which we've seen with the Windward Plains and the Scarlet Forest, where you can physically walk between them, making the world feel more real. But the thing is, in this story, in this introductory section, you actually bounce between the locales often. Instead of being in the first locale until it's mostly done and now you move to B and get that mostly done, you're immediately in the first locale where you don't get the whole thing revealed to you immediately. It's bit by bit as you follow the story to what's relevant, discovering the village of that location, widening out the area that you're exploring where you understand and know what's safe and what isn't. You're progressing through the sections and then reporting your findings. And the story really keeps you on track with that, not letting, say, a new player get lost in all the different options. Something that they do a couple times is have you follow along with a couple NPCs. Let's say you're going to a village or you're going to do an objective. You're traveling through a new location, through a new area. You don't actually know what's here. It's dangerous. Running off on your own could result in you getting into a lot of trouble. So through this reason or that reason, you're journeying with a group in a specific way to try to get to a specific place. On the way, they'll present you with information. You might encounter some monster lore or context of the hunt that's coming up, such as, why is the water so red here, and yet it clears up in a different area? Maybe someone suddenly goes missing. In some cases, you do have quite a lot of information about the hunt that's coming up. You know your target, you know why you're going after it, you're brought to its general location. Whereas in others, it very much finds you and interrupts what you're doing. You're not working through a list of monsters anymore, but following the journey and dealing with what challenges you have in that moment. Which then of course unlocks that monster as an optional hunt to go do if you want to go fight it again. And much like any Monster Hunter game, you're still going to go back to your base camp and craft and upgrade as before. It's just different in the way that the skills work, because for example, on the gear, they're separated and work in a new way. Offensive skills are going to be tied to the weapon based on the weapon you're holding and its current upgrade level, whereas the defensive skills are on your armor and the utility of that. So the couple examples I could give you from that early section would be, say, the charge blade. The third upgrade you get for the charge blade was the rapid morph skill, which gives you better switch speed but also morph damage once you get some levels on it. So a relevant skill is built into the weapon you're using simply for upgrading it. And what I just said was only the first level of the ore tree. And we know that as you progress these, it's going to introduce new decoration slots, letting you modify things even more. Working hand in hand with the idea of having two weapons, where you swap between them. You're going to keep the same armor on, the same defensive skills, but that swap provides a new weapon with its own offensive skills relevant to that weapon, and the decoration slots with whatever you set up in there before. Now you do still get side quests and options to go explore at your own pace once it's unlocked, and that does feed back into the well-known loop. Hunt, gather and upgrade, become stronger to face more challenging situations. Invest time into becoming more upgraded and stronger for the harder challenges if you need to. Or don't if you're an experienced hunter with good gameplay that can overcome. It's just that it's presented in a new way that tells a story about the people and the locale you're in, the current time, from small picture to big too. You're slowly opening up the world and gaining more and more access to it, but you're not forced to go back each time you finish whatever it is you're currently doing. So yeah, a lot less start-stop feeling. One thing I want to highlight is how they introduce new features in a pretty careful way then. You're not instantly crafting or gathering exactly, you're not trading right away. In fact, the cooking isn't even there until you've done a few hunts. Something they've said in different interviews is how they want to make Wilds a more accessible Monster Hunter game. They've looked at the stats and seen where players stop, those who don't make it the whole way, to the point where the devs consider it really playing Monster Hunter. They ask themselves, why did X or Y person not make it further? What were the key issues keeping new players from getting to what they think is the best part of the game? You can really feel that change in Wilds across all the many systems and things to consider that maybe would be overwhelming if you were new to the series. For example, in the time that we played, during one mission, we were following the story, taking us to a specific place, but in passing, an NPC mentioned how the supply team's still not here, so they're out of honey. On that next mission, we take a detour with a local who knows a good spot for honey. That detour takes some time to talk about some endemic life we're going past, some of the small monsters, and maybe how you might take advantage of those things, but also taking us to a nice pile of honey in that area. Which in itself is useful knowledge from then on, because now you know there's actually quite a pile of honey to go collect if you need some in that area. Now I know about a couple systems in this locale, in this area, cleverly drip fed to me in the context of the story. Another way that they help new players in this way was a new feature with the smithy. Gemma at one point was telling us that she can recommend items to craft or what upgrades to consider. So rather than being overwhelmed by all the different upgrade and options you have for crafting, she can suggest a good list of options that none of them will be a bad idea to go for, preventing that overwhelmed by choices feeling. At different points, she also gave us a little bit of materials to do some basic beginner crafting and upgrading to encourage players to actually do these things for the first time, instead of maybe hoarding supplies. So it is familiar Monster Hunter, but it's just presented in a new way that breaks up the formula for the older players, but then also works as a great introduction to new players to help them slowly put it together. So there's a lot of different examples I could give, but I think that puts it across. It's still Monster Hunter at its core, presented in a new way. It's just a different flow and feel. I like that for the older players to break up what we're used to, like say not sticking to one locale for long and bouncing between them. We're not ticking off a list of monsters we currently need to finish before the next major step. We're following a story that's naturally taking us around the world and expanding our options. You can break away from that main story when you want and go explore and do optional content within what you've found so far. And with this new way that it flows, I just think it takes into account the new players and their experience very well, to drip feed them the right information at the right time, layering onto itself, becoming more complex and involved as we know Monster Hunter is. So it breaks up the familiar formula, and in doing so, I think it opens itself up to a wider audience in a more welcoming way, without necessarily making the game easier big picture. It's going to be good. We're almost at release. So for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.